Thank you. Over to you, Gursh.
Thank you very much, Claire, and thank you for inviting me. I'm really pleased to be here. Such a topical issue that I'm going to talk about today as well. Just to sort of briefly introduce myself, my name's Gursh, Managing Director of i4H. Work mainly in the social housing sector, but I have done some work in the private sector as well. We've run my consultancy. I've worked in social housing since pretty much since I graduated, but I've been doing consultancy work in the sector for the last probably 12 years now. We do a lot of projects around building data lakes, data warehouses, AWS, Azure. We also, I have developed a CRM product which uses a large language model, which is going to be a theme of what I'm going to be talking about today. I am an Azure engineer. I am also done a number of projects in AWS and Google. I've coded my own system, my own CRM. So I'm a bit of a technical geek. And I am always getting told off, and rightly so, by data protection colleagues. So which is perfect. Yeah, and welcome to that later on as well. So what I'm going to talk about today is large language models, and I think it's very topical having data protection colleagues talking about this in particular, because for me there's some huge risks with the development of large language models. And large language models are all around us now. Most of us are using Claude, ChatGPT, Copilot, Google, Gemini. I personally use it on a day-to-day basis, and the world really is gearing up for this to explode. There's Blackwood chips that are coming. There's quantum computing that is coming. You might have noticed that there's a bit of a competition with upgrades. ChatGPT has launched ChatGPT 5. Gemini have launched theirs. So it's really blowing up. And the next side of it is going to be the agentic AI side, which pretty much will automate a lot of tasks for us, which is really coming in now. So I really want to talk about some of those, and I'm going to really relate this back to some of the concerns that I've got around data protection. But what I'm going to really quickly do is let me share my screen, take you through a few slides. There's not that many of them, I promise. And they're all about things that I really want to sort of discuss in here as well. So let me go through and talk briefly about what large language models are. Don't worry about this. I'm not going to go through this diagram. Listen, some of you might leave straight away, but the basis of LLMs is all around transformer-based neural networks. It's every LLM has this in it. And very simply put, the input is based on a lot of data. Later on, I'll talk about what types of data. You have this head attention, which is basically your engine that does the work behind the scenes in converting text into numbers, into tokens. And very simply put, this is really what it does. I wanted to break it down really to the lowest level of what a large language model does. So it takes text, and that text could be from a website, it could be a book, it could be research papers, converts it into a token. And tokenization is what large language models does. It then has this huge embedded layer, which does the conversion process, is what I was talking about before. It then does this work around looking at types of text and splitting it into the right category. So if it's a bank, it will split it between a real bank and a bank that we typically use for our day-to-day purposes. It then has a processing layer that makes a complete sentence of that river bank or a money bank, puts all other outputs to it as well. So a bank then does this, it lets you do your banking, lets you do direct debits, puts that context all together and then generates responses for us. So really down to a minimum level, this is what large language models are doing. Now, when I was sort of doing some research into this, and funnily enough, it's a large language model that's given me this data. In terms of what data goes into those, you think that web is sometimes almost 70% of a large language model. I won't mention any names just in case I get sued and anyone's sort of listening to this. But if you think of some of the risks straight away of if you're using web content, how do we know that web content's right? Has it been researched? Has it been authenticated? I personally would like to see books on literature and academic papers to be 60% of large language models. So straight away, I've got an issue with large language models, and they can be manipulated. One name that I will use, Grok, and you know who the owner of that is saying that they're going to put their own spin on this. They're going to use their own data sources for this. And straight away, you can see there's an issue that's occurring in large language models. And you might have seen you might have read some of the huge biases that are coming out in this. One of the biggest ones that I saw was in America, like African Americans were, the large language model was saying that downscoring them for mortgages, and they weren't taking into account their personal circumstances. But you can see there's an engineer potentially has just used blanket data without really doing any work around it, which is my biggest issue with large language models at the minute. You can see there's a huge amount of biases that can happen. So basically, it all relies on the people that are putting that data in. We will never know who those people are. So again, some concerns that are coming around here. Now, there's different types. You might have heard of the two types that we're seeing as generative AI and large language models and agentic. Generative is what we tend to be using. So it's going to be ChatGPT. We all use it, don't we? No one Googles anymore, as we're using it on a day-to-day basis. Agentic models and large language is where the future of AI really is happening now. If you think about now that there's self-drive cars, they're based on large language models. Huge amounts, millions and trillions amount of data that are going into those, and they're very much goal-driven. So they use all the data that's in large language models and then start making their own decisions based on some of the training that, again, are done by engineers. And worryingly enough now that they will be querying APIs, databases, and going with other agents coordinating it between themselves. And again, huge issues there with data protection straight away if they're going into querying databases on a live search that you're doing. But that is the future. That's where the world is going. We will have agents pretty much in the next 5 years. I'd even say 3 years. ChatGPT 5 already doing that. They've got their agent mode already in place, so you can have it working in the background. It's got its own terminal, and I used it to say, "Give me some research on holidays," and it was doing it for me. I was testing it the other day, so it's already in place. Soon it'll be able to see your terminal, see your work that you're doing, and say, did you realize you could probably do this better? You could fix this bit of code by doing this. That is coming pretty rapidly. Yeah. Yeah. I won't go into the technical side too much, but this is some of the infrastructure that goes behind a large language model. Now, for me, again, from a data protection perspective, we don't want to leak data into large language models that exist. We've got to be really careful of that. Organizations and some of the work that I'm doing with our customers is that all data is under their own their own license. So they're not putting search into ChatGPT. I know some organizations have banned the use of ChatGPT for personal data, and rightly so. So everything should be under your own tenant. All the data sources should be your own data sources. They'll be secured. And then you've got tools like Azure OpenAI. There's other tools available as well. But they will take data and they will convert your data into a natural language. They will build prompts and text based on your large language model that's put together. And the outcome is that they will start giving you information about your own organization, your own customers under your own tenant. And these are some of the technologies that are being used. I am doing something very similar. I've developed my own. I've got a Zoho CRM product, which uses external APIs. It uses a vector database, and the vector database I use it for is translating photos into vectors into repairs, which the outcome of that will be that if I can feed it millions and millions worth of data, it will generate that repair for me based on pictures. So this is what I am currently building, but you can see that it needs a huge amount of data. And also we're linking it back to our CRM module, which needs a huge amount of protection, not just with names, but you can still identify somebody by the address. So we're also masking the first bit of the address in here as well. So this is some of the work that currently that we are doing, and it's generating responses based on those 3 data sources in there as well. So this is work in progress. and it's taken up a lot of my brain capacity as well. Sometimes when I'm working on this, I can't sleep because I'm constantly thinking about it. So, but this is going to gain momentum. I think most organizations are going to start having these type of agentic models in place. So I've got some serious concerns, and I'm sure you have as well. In some of this, I'm pretty sure unlawful processing of personal data is happening, because it goes down to my last point there in audibility is who's checking what's going into LLMs. No one knows, and that's my real concern. Lack of purpose limitation. Again, the limitation there is that again we don't know what's going in there. We don't know if the risks are putting into place with subject access requests. None of that is unknown at the minute. Now, I know for sure data is not being anonymized, as pseudonames are not being given to data as well. We're doing it with our large language models. But if someone is using ChatGPT and they've, by mistake, put some personal data in, that's now in the public domain. So there's some real concerns. Output of the models, there are leaks in these models. It is happening. No one's telling you about them, but the leaks are happening in there as well. And you might have read about some of these as well. And if you're linking some of your data to third-party models, which, when I talk about the data sources, that is happening. Again, there's risks around protecting personal and protected data. And I know for sure there is the inability to honor data subject rights requests. That is going to happen. And my real concern here is that we need data protection colleagues and the community to be taking a lead on large language models when they're designed right from the onset of those. And I'm pretty sure that's not always happening. And I do want that to happen, and I do want you to take the lead, because someone should be looking at the sources saying, hold on a minute, protect this data, take this data out. These sources on our public website is wrong. We need to change that data. It's not correct. And that's a conversation really I wanted to start sort of having today with you guys as well, is that, are you really involved in those large language models? They're already out there. Some are going to be personalizing it for their own company. And again, are you confident that you guys are involved in some of those as well? But really want to open up the floor to that.
It's the getting involved is the problem, which I think a lot of our attendees today will agree with. We should, as data protection professionals, absolutely be involved in these conversations, and we want to be. But it's, how do we make that happen? Not everybody is even aware that there's a data protection issue, partly because data protection is misunderstood. You started there by saying about the fair and lawful processing. Absolutely spot on. That's what everybody here that's in data protection would recognise. But a lot of more IT people or more kind of pure business people think of it as just security. So as long as there's some encryption and firewalls and, that fancy stuff, then, we're great. And that is a conversation that I'm always trying to have, and that's what these events are always trying to have. And I think that's the absolute key. That was so interesting. Thank you so much for that. And I think we're going to have a really lively conversation in a moment when I open the floor. But I just, things that popped up to me. First of all, you said nobody Googles now. Well, I do. I'm old-fashioned. But that's just another reminder of how old-fashioned I am. Thank you for that. But the really interesting thing was about the bias. I mean, when I say interesting, I mean scary as hell, really. And what you said, that we don't know what biases the people who are training it and the materials that it's being trained on already have. And that's so hard because we don't even know our own biases. Everybody has inbuilt bias, whether we're conscious of it or unconscious of it. And how can we deal with other people who are unknown and their unknown biases if we can't even get a handle on our own? I don't have an answer to that. I'm just scared, basically.
I've got some serious concerns on that, Claire, because if you think about some of the examples that I use, and it's comments, and if you're including comment data in large language models, which people will do, those comments could have bias in them straight away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It could be
Yeah.
this tenant is always complaining.
Yeah.
And if someone's put that in, that will feed into the large language model.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
what I didn't do is a slide in terms of what is needed. Next is that everyone should have an AI policy. Everyone should include his protection officer in the onset and development of a large language model as default.
And or procurement. Yeah.
And procurement, absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you don't, these biases will happen because sometimes even I, as an engineer, wouldn't spot them. I'd bring those straight in. I'd just say, right, it's a comment, it's a data source. I'm going to bring it straight in. And it's not anyone's fault. They're not deliberately being biased.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Picked up those data sources that are liable for bias. And if you don't have someone overlooking them and someone from the data protection team looking at all the sources first, vetting it, and then letting the engineers let loose with it, this is going to happen. And it already has happened.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. A lot of examples where this has been built in, and large organizations that have used this are actively discriminating against people because of the quality of the inputs in the LLMs that they're using. So it's not them per se that's using it. It's what's already built into into the products. I think another key thing. Yeah, exactly.
That example that Gursh gave of the mortgages. That's scary.
Yeah, and it does happen. I think what's also really difficult is that, there is a concept and expectation that when you're using any automated decision engine, of which this is, you should really have a human reviewing it of the output before you use it to make a decision. Well, the whole premise of these systems is you're trying to take the human out of the equation. So this is the inherent problem. So when it comes to evaluating the outputs of it, it's very difficult for any individual and or organization to do it, because a lot of this is real-time outputs.
And it's just happening like that.
Exactly. There's no delay, there's no 5-minute window where someone's quickly reviewing it and going, you can't say that, and we're not saying that, or getting a prompt that says, we can't give you that answer at the moment. It doesn't happen like that. So that's one of the inherent problems with this type of architecture. And I think it highlights quite nicely, Gursh, what you're trying to say is that actually from a review aspect, there's multiple elements of the chain that need to be done. It's the LLM developers, it's the LLM testers, and it's us as organizations that are procuring and buying those LLMs. Every part of that chain needs to have the same thought processes around data protection, source validation, quality validation, input and output validation. It all has to be done across the entire chain. Well, that isn't happening at the moment. We know it's not. It's basically the Wild West out there. Everyone's hoovering up this vast amount of data that's not theirs. It's probably wrong. It's the old equation, to quote, shit in, shit out, which is basically what's happening. It's as simple as that. So
absolutely, Dave. Yeah, totally agree with this. And there's certain bits where you can take humans out of the process, because I use it for coding. We don't need humans in that process for that, do we?
Yeah.
But for which is the future, of what's happening, we need, and that's the concept, humans in the process. And absolutely, correct. And I think it needs to start with, we need some legislation to come in to protect some of this data in there, which is currently missing, or if I've missed it, if there is.
Well, I think the AI Act is what it's all about, really. This the whole point of the EU AI Act and some of the other NIST and ISO control frameworks that have come out specifically to address the AI element of data use. I think are very important. But as I said, that's all well and good, but it's not just us as data controllers that need to do it. The whole supply chain needs to do it right from the outset to ensure that it can basically be passed through as authentic, validated down the chain. So everyone then gets the ability to do that. At the moment, you try getting any information when you're doing vendor due diligence out of an LLM provider, you're going to get none. So it's very, very difficult. So once the ecosystem understands it and everyone starts playing the same game, then yes, I think we're going to have more of a chance of fulfilling this. But I think it's going to be a long process, and there's always going to be cowboys out there that just go, ignore that.
And they already have, and worryingly enough, they're already out there. They've already developed their large language models, and some people are searching on those. And so some of it is too late, but I think we should take a step back and say, yes, let's get some legislation that's out there. But as an organization, we need data protection to lead on the development of even a data warehouse or a data lake, never mind a large language model. We need data protection officers to sign it off.
How do we do that then, Gursh? So you're on the other side of the fence, so to speak, and most of us here are data protection professionals. How do we get onto your side of the fence? How do we get you guys to listen? Because not everybody's got the approach you've got.
Yeah, it's the responsibility of each organisation. So your chief technology officer needs to lead on this without any shadow of a doubt.
If we've
Dave
got
also
one.
mentioned, if you've got one. If you haven't, your data manager, whoever's responsible for your data, needs to say, before we start any large language model project, we need it to be chaired and led by a data protection officer. If we haven't got one in the organisation, let's get one in as a temporary basis.
That's really interesting, because we want to be involved, but also we're also very busy. So there is a real balance there. I'm not sure we should be leading, but I think we should be really, really involved.
We're advisory and guidance on the whole process. So we basically have to interpret the technical requirements and
because there's both,
put those into put them into the kind of data protection concerns, and then obviously act with the parties and interact. Exactly. But that's the key thing, is getting involved early, and this is the real kind of crux of the issue. Most organizations have the data protection team or data protection officer is considered, you know, an external add-on. They're not integrated fully within the business. They should be part of you know, the entire program lifecycle, from project spin-off, kick-off, requirements gathering. Exactly. So it's that key element, trying to get that within your organization. So if there's any one thing that any of you lot here can do that work in the space, is really focus on that. Get yourself into those meetings, get yourself about the business, become a real kind of flea in the armpit of the business and understand what's going on early enough,
and get those allies like Gursh. You know, there are other people out there. You know, if do you feel like you're a bit of a unicorn, that you understand the technology side, and you do get about the lawful processing or unlawful processing that's happened. But there are others like you out there. We just need to find them and like make friends with them.
Absolutely, and more events like this. And what I tend to do is I say that any sign off of any data has to be it has to go via data protection officer. So once that's sourced, we put it into the large language model or the data warehouse, sign it off first before we even put it in any type of a data format. So that's what I've started doing that, and that seems to go down really well with organizations. Sometimes they'll go back to me and say, can you mask this part of the address? I never used to do that before. I used to take the names out.
Because you weren't thinking about,
Exactly. And then it was only when I said, okay, let's get the protection of teams involved. They said, take this little bit part of the address out, so you can't identify the address either. You can leave the area in, you can leave an identifier in, because we can get that afterwards. So that's where I was really sold into it. And I think more conversations like this, more events like this will help when it comes to developing large language models. It's a good time to get in there while organizations start thinking about their own tenanted version of them now as well.
Absolutely. And for Gursh, what would your advice be for data protection professionals who are working with tech teams for data lakes? Oh, makes me shudder. When they claim it's just storing data that already exists, but putting it in one location. So I think what we've got here from this question is that you've got tech teams who are just going, what's the big deal about a data lake? We've got the data already, we're just bunging it in the lake. And as a data protection professional, you saw, I said I shuddered. I'm not really exaggerating. It really does make me feel a little bit, how do we get that conversation going?
It's a really good question. And I was one of those people. I was like, right, here we go. I'm just going to take your data. I'm going to put it into a data lake. No problem there. But what I realized was that there was data in there that wasn't meeting GDPR purposes, and it wasn't protecting individual data as well. And I got to know that pretty quickly. So what I would advise is that you would say to them, let me sign that data off for you. Let me do the hard work for you, so you haven't got some of those legal issues. And if you're fighting someone with sort of legal issues, you know, it tends to get their attention.